So, good. Well, very distinguished guests. I'd like to warm welcome you to Nordic Pavilion here in wonderful Osaka World Exhibition. As the official body for the governmental collaboration between the Nordic countries, the Nordic Council of Ministers is proud to be co-host in this pavilion. My name is Nina Aagard, and I'm the Director of Communications at the Nordic Council of Ministers, and we have our secretariat in Copenhagen. The Nordic cooperation is one of the world's most extensive forms of regional collaboration. Our intergovernmental collaboration includes Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Åland Islands. So 8 governments. I'm very delighted to be here today to highlight circular economy and critical raw materials, the vital topics to drive the systemic change. Shift to a circular economy is necessary for the green transition to happen both in Nordics and globally. I would like to thank our EU colleagues for the important frame for the day based on forward-thinking directives and regulations. And thank you for the Nordic hotspots and the other arranging partners to act on EU's agenda and gathering us here today. And of course, all for all you coming here today. The Nordic Council of Ministers, we are determined to deliver on the clear and ambitious joint political direction by the Nordic Prime Ministers that states that Nordic region shall be the most sustainable and integrated region in the world by 2030. Everything we do is designed to help our region to become green, competitive, and socially sound. The transition to a circular economy is key to achieving this goal. This takes a multitude of means. We work for evidence-based, and we put much effort to achieve interdisciplinary cooperation to secure a holistic approach, not only within the Nordic region, but internationally and in global partnerships. In this time of rapid changing geopolitical situation and increased consequences of the climate crisis, we need to react fast to rebalance our resources. Circular economy and the critical raw materials are matters of the international community together to drive towards long-term sustainability. We advocate for even more collaboration across industrial and academic disciplines, across the regions, to future-proof our societies. The challenges are global, therefore we need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina Aagard. I just want to say I'm very happy that we're gathered here today. Be mindful, since this is a session, we're going to talk about materials that the building we're in the Nordic circles, it is hosting about 10,000 people every day now, and it's quite voluminous around us. 250,000 people enter the expo every day now. And if you look at the materials, this is built in Japanese wood, the suki tree. And the plan for this building is to continue its life in as another housing in another constructions later on. So the style of this house, the pavilion, is called longhouse. In the Nordic region, this is a tradition for housing where multiple families could live together. So when you walk out, you will see there are 5 different layers representing the 5 families of the Nordic region. And the core values here is about the basic is trust and collaboration, reminding that when living in harsh Arctic surroundings in tough nature, having trust and collaborating is necessary to survive. So I think this is some kind of the key words for the session, where we're really going to dive into some of the core essentials in the circular economy. We dive not into all the materials, but some of the selected critical strategic materials, and listen to experts and representatives both from Japan and from Europe, and can't wait to listen and gathering ideas and insight through this panel today.
Thank you for a beautiful introduction, Catherine. I'm Einar Holte. I'm from Nordic Circular Hotspot and Natural State, one of the hosting organizations. And as Catherine so beautifully emphasized, we really need to talk about the natural resources in our societies and markets for our human need. And the circular economy is one of the basic principles that can help us transition to a more secure and sustainable future. That is the topics of today. We have wish you a very big welcome to all of you. And again, thank you to Nina for that beautiful introduction to the Nordics in general. And welcome to all of you who are here present at the Nordic Pavilion. But also welcome to all of you that watch us from all over the world in the different streams. We will be broadcasting this both at Nordic Circular Hotspot, but also at the Nordic Council of Ministers platforms, in addition to the ECESP. So it's a wonderful broadcast here from Osaka, the World Expo, where these conversations are to be hosted. So today we have a quite good program. It is a diversity of experts. It's a fantastic panels. Really, we hope we will get some good conversations. We will start with an introduction to the topic with Catherine and Killian, before we will go into the circular business models and the concrete cases with some very esteemed guests. Before we will round around for another conversation, Nina will be welcomed up again, together with Yumiko Noda, for instance, from here in Japan. And then it will be a conclusive conversation with Janis Potočnik, streamed from Europe, where he is, and try to bridge the world as we are doing here in the World Expo. So that is the plan for the day. So to start it off, Catherine, do you want to invite Killian to stage for a conversation on the topic before we go into the concrete cases afterwards?
I will. Dear Killian, I will welcome Killian Lowen. You're one of the founders of the European Circular Economy. Yeah, I think we can do it here.
Okay. Oops.
So we'll manage doing this.
Or you can hold a
Handheld,
just
yeah.
like that.
Thank you.
I believe you are one of the reasons why we actually are here, because somebody has to start a movement, and this when the movement of European Circular Economy Stakeholder platform was initiated, and it has had a big brother for many years. So how do you feel about all these people meeting under the flagship of European Circular Economy Stakeholder platform?
Well, I'm delighted, and thank you for having me here, first of all. And yeah, I was one of a whole team of people, of course. Nobody does anything on their own, especially in circular economy. But it's exciting for me when I first started going to Brussels, to Europe, as part of the European Economic and Social Committee, and in this particular group. And I saw the initiatives in 2015, 2014 on circular economy. It's great now to see, from that starting point, all these years, 10 years later, really, to see how much it's grown, the momentum, how much the family has grown, and the connections have grown. So it's really exciting to see how that has all developed, and to see each other. When was it? A few months ago in Brazil at the World Circular Economy Forum, and all of the different initiatives that are happening. It's a really exciting place to be.
Myself, I am not a material expert, but I'm a material fan. This is my kitchen cloth. Anybody recognize this fantastic pattern? So diving into all the periodic elements. And also, I'm so happy also to see, when I was on the airplane here, I bought this airplane book. When material becomes this kind of literature, material world, and it's a bestseller. I think we're really changed. It has happened a lot the last years, and I know that policy has made the topic of resource management and resource leadership really among the crucial ones in Europe. Can you please give us a little backdrop of what is going on right now, Kilian?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to get the Madonna song out of my head now. We're living in a material world. Maybe we should make a comeback. It should be our theme tune. So I have to turn off the music to concentrate on the question that you asked me. So what's happening at the moment? Well, we know there's lots of different legislative proposals coming through on an EU level, in particular the Circular Economy Act that's coming ahead. But already from 2023 we had the Critical Raw Materials Act. And this was a recognition really that to achieve our climate goals and achieve our commitments under sustainable development, that we had to focus on managing materials and raw materials. And so there's some very specific targets within that act, including, if I can refer to my notes, including domestic extraction equal to 10% of annual consumption, and a target for a processing capacity of 40% of EU needs, recycling capacity for 25% of demand. And so there's these different numbers put in place to help create certainty, first of all, for businesses to be able to move in a direction. And of course, there's a whole lot of detail underneath these headline figures in the act of where we measure these recycling rates, for example, a controversial topic that we've touched on in previous sessions, and how we achieve them. So at the moment, I would say the momentum is that we're a little bit behind where we want to be. But at the same time, in March of this year, over 40 projects were funded by the Commission to move more in this direction within the EU. And in June, there was a dozen more from outside of the EU. So there's a real recognition about supply chains and the importance of that this is this needs global cooperation for us to be able to solve the problem. I think so much of our conversations on circular economy run into that issue, or maybe it's a problem. I see it more as a challenge that we can't do circular economy in isolation, whether that's within an industry, within a business, within a supply chain, within a country or a region. So it forces us to be collaborative and to come together, but that's what we do very well, I think, within the circular platform.
I think that brings us to the next leg, where we're really going to dive into some of the value chains that are exposed into these regulations. We know also Japan has had strong regulations promoting the circular economy, so we'll be listening out and see how this aligns together. What we do know is that Europe consumes 25% of global resources, but produces 3%. So this is not manageable one region alone. This really needs global collaboration. So here we do a switch on the stage and listen out what's going on in the industries, in the market out there right now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kilian and Catherine. Beautiful overall introduction to the main topic. But how to get this concrete? It is a global issue. It is exactly global collaboration that is needed. Value chains, supply chains are global, as you very well emphasized. So we have the joy of inviting a representative panel of experts. We have with us two very strong industry companies, Toyota and Panasonic. We also have the youth perspective and also the network and initiative perspective from Holland Circular Hotspot. So I'll just want to introduce each one of you, and when I start reading your introduction, you can come up and you can find a seat here in the chairs, and I hope we will have a very good conversations on the topic. So first up, I would like to welcome Agatha Meissner, the co-founder and advisor on Generate Climate Europe. If you can come to the stage, there you were. Please sit here on my side. An activist and an environmentalist driven by empowering young people to become change makers in the communities. So you represent our future, I guess. You've been working as a representation in the EU decision-making processes, multi-stakeholder collaboration, as well as EU advocacy, and campaigning on climate and environmental issues. You write and talk about youth empowerment, participatory democracy, system change, circular economy, and climate change. So that's a good description of you. Then next on my list, I would like to welcome from Toyota, Takahiro Iwaya-san. Please sit next to Agate. As a project manager for sustainability at Toyota, where he leads effort to integrate circular bioeconomic principles into the automotive sector. He focuses on sustainability materials, resource efficiency, and innovation across the vehicle life cycle, from design through recycling. Aagard contributes to Toyota's goal of carbon neutrality and environmental stewardship, helping drive business models that are both competitive and ecologically responsible. So welcome to the stage. Really much looking forward to hear what you have to say. The next is Panasonic. Dan Sweeney, please. Dan Sweeney works in Panasonic Global Procurement Division, and procurement is of course important, specifically in the copper cathode section within the procurement center for raw materials and mechanical components. In this role, you lead efforts of integrating sustainability into the procurement of copper cathodes, focusing on sourcing practices, the emphasizing recycled content, supply chain transparency, environmental responsibility, and cost effectiveness. Sweezy contributes to a Panasonic broader strategy for building circular supply chains for the future. Very good. And then fourth, I would like to welcome my friend from our sister organization in Holland, Holland Circular Hotspot, Freek van Eyck. Please enter the stage, find your chair. So I'll do your introduction as well, so everybody who sees and meets you gets the context of who you are. CEO, Holland Circular Hotspot, a private-public platform that facilitates the transition to a circular economy at international level by bringing together government authorities, knowledge institutions, and especially businesses. He also is vice chair of Circular Bio-Based Delta, an alliance of Dutch provinces, business and knowledge centers pioneering sustainable circular and bio-based economy. He's a senior Dutch expert in the field of waste management, and he serves as a managing director of Acceleration, and is also one of the partners of EU Circular Day. So welcome to the stage. I think we should have an applause for the panel. Very good. Agatha, I think we should just start briefly with your perspectives. And how do you see to ensure workers, nature's share in the value creation of businesses and entrepreneurs from your perspective? What is your core topics to bring to the agenda for this topic?
Thank you, and really wonderful to be here. I'm very glad that we're having this conversation. I think it's an incredibly important topic. So, I mean, you mentioned communities and nature, and I think there's something to be talked about there when it comes to extraction and processing, and particularly, I think this is really crucial, but we also need to realize that they come with serious environmental and social costs. And this is particularly when it comes to communities and workers in producing regions. So you might know that mining produces more industrial waste than any other sector. And it also has been linked to all kinds of different toxic impacts on both humans and on ecosystems. And when it comes to communities in particular, we have seen there are a number of activists and communities that are fighting for their rights at the grassroots level. But unfortunately, this is actually the deadliest industries when it comes to those who are opposing it. So if you look at the numbers of environmental defenders, the ones who are trying to oppose the mining industry are actually the ones who end up being killed more than any other defenders across all the different industries. So I think we have to be very mindful of the fact that when we talk about cobalt or lithium or aluminum or copper, they have all been associated with very high environmental and social risks. And I think this is a very important conversation to be have when we talk about materials, when we talk about circular economy, that there is a very strong social justice component in here that we cannot forget. So when it comes to the protection of communities, a lot of the discussion very much focuses on what we call the free, prior, and informed consent. So making sure that there is a consent mechanism there from the communities in the ground. But in practice, what often happens is that this is very much insufficient. And it actually doesn't give communities enough of a say in proposed projects. So there has been a strong movement to push for going further than that and making sure that communities actually have a right to say no. So making sure that we give them and empower them with an opportunity to reject certain proposals. I think this is a very important conversation to be had around who actually decides around the projects that we want to invest in, and what right do we have when it comes to decisions, particularly when we talk about ecosystems, but also when we talk about human ecosystems. And I think there's also a consideration here around, I mean, you mentioned nature. Very often what happens is that we end up with all kinds of different protected areas that still see a lot of extraction, that become zones for extraction. And we can talk here about the EU context, but I think also in the wider context, global perspective, what is very important is that we end up with protected areas that are the no-go zones, so to say, for extractions. So really being mindful of both the social and the environmental justice impact. And yesterday we had a really interesting conversation in one of the panels around the informal sector. Here is what I come to the worker justice. So making sure that workers who are involved, for example, in recycling, and this is particularly relevant, I think, when we talk about Global South, that their jobs in recycling are fully recognized, that they are formalized, they're safe, they're fairly paid, and they're gender equitable. There's a very strong gender component here when we talk about extraction that I think very often ends up being completely overseen, and that we don't fully recognize the importance of it. So just to wrap up, I think in the long term, all of these points are really important, and I think they point to a wider issue, which is how do we create what we call resource democracy? So how do we create a system where we treat resources as actual common goods to be managed in a democratic way, rather than thinking about resources as exploited purely for profit? And this is what we see a lot in a lot of industry conversations, but also in a lot of the common practices. So I think whilst all of these protections are really essential, I think asking how to share the benefits and assuming that extraction will always grow is really important. So I think we'll have a bit more time to talk about the deeper question on how do we actually reduce demand, because I think this is very fundamental. But in the meantime, placing social and environmental justice at the heart of the conversation on materials is really, really crucial.
Thank you for a very elaborate but important answer or point to talk about further. And you mentioned kind of this, you represent a very strong awareness of impact and consequence of extraction and the societal impact and these factors. And you also mentioned, for instance, copper. And now we have a procurement responsible for copper in Panasonic. And also to hear from you how you bring in this the consequences of awareness in both consumers and in demand, and also how you facilitate it yourself with the angle of both transparency on kind of virgin materials, but also how you can work with implementing circular principles and into urban minings or reuse. So how does this concretely work for you guys in Panasonic? Dan.
Hello? Okay. Hi. Yeah, thank you for the great question, and thank you for inviting me today. It is a great honor to be here. Yes, so allow me to explain what we're doing as Panasonic. And so, of course, as a sourcing manager, the material deficit and upcoming the imminent deficit is quite fearful for me. Yeah. So traditionally, what we're doing right now is trying to make better use of the scraps generated from our appliances. So right now, yes, I mean, Japan has a very good law of recycling appliances as well, so they're not going to waste. But then, like, after like it's been recycled, the materials, like, do we actually collect it and make use of it, has not been very transparent. So we're trying to change that. So for example, like, so we're trying to make self-sustaining material cycle ourselves. Yeah. So for example, so for used appliances, so our group company carefully categorize the status and the grades of scraps. Like, is this a high purity scraps, or is this, has a lot of oils or other minerals in it? And then, like, we are trying to put it back in our production cycle so that not only, we can use it for ourselves, but it is, good for creating the circular models ourselves. So for like, for the categorized very high purity scraps, we try to return directly to the fabrication companies. So this is ideal, since it requires only small refining and it has the lowest CO2 emission possible and can be used directly to our production cycle. So our company, Furukawa, our friend company, Furukawa, is taking care of that right now. And for the other lower to mid-tier scraps, they need to be much more purified to be used in our production cycle, so return back to the copper smelters. Yeah, and each smelters has their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, for e-scraps that generated from electrical parts, our Mitsubishi can generate not only copper, but also gold and silver and other elements from too. And for the lower to mid-tier scraps, the other smelters like JX Metal can generate us copper in much more pure form. So like that, so we are trying to make the best use of these domestic appliance scraps and try to circulate in our production cycle. And right now, so we have this model, but we're trying to expand our partners of like-minded people. Yeah, so not only just Panasonic, but also as Japanese industry as a whole, we can better prepare ourselves for upcoming material deficit.
That's very interesting. So how do you collaborate with competitors in this value chain approach? And also, how big percentage do you manage to bring into recycled, and how do you work with that?
Yes, so the percentage is still quite small. We have reached 15%, so it's still far from what's necessary. Yeah, but we are still getting there. And for actually with competitors, so we actually, as this issue is the problem for entire Japan, so we actually exchange information with our competitors. So to share and try to expand. The more the group we have, the more the method that we can perhaps use, to better make use of scraps.
Yeah, it's also a market and it needs critical mass. So if you manage to make that a profitable way.
Exactly.
Very quickly on just procurement with the transparency and how do you work with that, and also how do you see the consumer, the awareness in the market, act or be informed or ask for sustainability propositions within this topic?
Yes, so I think yes, there are a lot more demands from consumers as well for the recycled initiative, certainly. But then like that, we need to work together with a sales team, certainly. Like how we can make this, well, because we're a business, so how we can make this economically beneficial. Actually, like utilizing scraps, actually costs quite a lot. Like because we have to purify, we have to sort, we have to categorize the scraps, determine where in the whole supply chain we can return the scraps. So and like in terms of transparency as well. So these were not necessary before. It used to be much simpler world, but now like we have to invest more in softwares, more in human resources to do it. Yeah. So you actually need to promote further to the consumers to welcome our initiative. Very good.
Another very important Japanese industry is Toyota. Your design program, and how do you design and work with these topics in the creating of Toyota cars, Toyota products, and how is your perspective on this?
Okay. At first, thank you for your question, Aina. So, and thank you for inviting today. So it's an honor to me to join this great meeting in a great wood house.
Wood house.
And for personally, so I'm a little bit nervous because in front of me, so Yumiko-san is my teacher of circular economy, but I try to express today. The use.
Wow.
Sorry. So it's a question is design, how to change.
How do you
design.
implement this in your
Yeah.
design
So-
industries?
Yeah, so actually the circular economy, everything is important. But for industry, the design is most important, I think. Then we means Toyota and other OEM also has so far focusing on the quality, big quality at low cost currently. But we have to change actually. So furthermore, to incorporate the circular concept into the design is crucial from now. But let's say, so before talking about the design, I think to change the mind means not only engineer, but also executives is very important, I think. In Toyota, we talked together, engineer side and corporate side, including board members. And we has decided to engage the entire company to advance the circular economy. We decided, yeah. Then currently we are making a roadmap to the 2030, and it includes the strategy of parts and the material as well. Then I think you can imagine, so big has many parts and materials. It's not easy task.
No.
Actually, no. But we don't want the circular economy to remain just a slogan. We proceed advance this activity step by step. It's a strong point of industry sector. We will proceed this activity. Then actually this is a role of Toyota and our mission, I believe. Thank you very much.
It's a very good answer. So you bring it from the very top. You need to take the decision.
Yeah.
And you both represent not only Japanese brands, but the global brands or industries in a very big consent. And you talk about quality. So what is your perspective of quality in a sustainability perspective?
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, I'm not representative of Toyota,
No.
global OEM, but it's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Just I believe, we, industry sectors, we always achieve and broke the barrier, not only cost, quality, and something. So I believe in future, where we have a technology to do this, and not only Toyota, but also European company, together we can achieve this mission together, and it's a good environment we have, background we have, so easy to collaborate, not only technology side, but also policy making side. We can do, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. So circularity will be a part of the quality and the quality proposition of Toyota and Panasonic in the beginning. In the future, that's very good. Just very quickly again, just very concrete, what is the design feature that you have seen has created the most independency of material or the most recycling effect? What in Toyota? What is the one concrete example, or if you have a concrete example, where you achieved a big target of recycling models in your production?
Difficult question. So design means structure and materials, both actually. We are focusing on the both actually. There are many activities. Then so one thing is to change the design for easy disassembly for dismantlers. Yeah.
Very important.
But as I said, now currently we are focusing on the manufacturing.
Yeah.
But from now, after let's say ELB. So at dismantling portion, we need to consider how to dismantle, how to disassembly. We have to consider from the design timing. It's important, I think.
So you're actually designing for circularity in the afterlife of the product.
Correct.
Full life cycle design.
Through the value chain.
So modularity, that's very good. Thank you so much for the insight in how your enterprises and businesses work with circular principles in this matter. Freek, you are working with businesses in Europe. Two quick reflections from your side. First of all, from the European perspective, which proven practices do you see is most efficient in or is most successful in the transitional processes in Europe? And number two, what do you see from the European perspective, what we can learn from the Japanese market culture? So can you give some reflections on that? From your
the last
side?
one is a new one, but I have some time to think about it.
That's why I gave it to you after.
No,
We need to
it's
keep
cool
it a
be
bit
invited
alive.
for such a hot topic. Thank you. We all know that Europe, like Japan, is very dependent on critical raw materials. And what you typically see as the first response is, what do we do if we're dependent? Mining in Europe, on land or on sea. Highly sensitive as a topic, and takes at least 10 years to set something up. Diversifying suppliers, so not only China, but also Chile, Australia, Canada, South Africa. Third one is stockpiling for hard times. Some companies have 2 months, some have 1 to 2 years, depending on how critical it is for their business. But they don't communicate much about it. But of course, our story, circular economy, is the no-regret scenario. Keep in the loop what you have and use it as long as possible. Use less resources, circular bio-based inputs, keep them in the loop and close the loop for resources. So what can you do? Use less. You remember this time they have these funny round discs with music on it? We dematerialize. We use digital means to dematerialize. First, design is key. In the design phase, you can probably phase out 80% of the environmental impact. Think design for dismantling, design for remanufacturing, design for recycling, all good things. A nice example that we like is Fairphone. So not only they do sustainable sourcing, but they also have replaceable modules. Cameras, battery, screens. That means your phone will get a much longer life. How is Europe adapting to the design phase? The Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, ESPR, which is adopted in 2024. And it's basically our flagship. So that means eco-design requirements, so durability, repairability, energy and material efficiency, recyclability, and it introduces a digital passport. And the right to repair regulation is a clear incentive to make sure that short lifespans are avoided. Another thing which helps in general is producer responsibility, extended producer responsibility. Polluter pays, and for instance in the Netherlands it's not only about collection and recycling, but also about design changes. Other business model, products as a service. If you keep the ownership of a product, you tend to think longer about...
Can you lift the...
If you keep the ownership, you tend to think better about the total lifetime of a product and if it has an afterlife or not. In the Netherlands, very Dutch, you have the swap feeds, for instance. Mitsubishi Europe has an elevator as a service, pay by use. And of course, we all know Signify with Lightning as a service. Refurbishment and remanufacturing, very cool in capital equipment, for instance. If your capital is in materials, think a milking robot, a medical scanner, it makes so much sense to use these materials as long as possible. Well, let's have a very typical Dutch example, a milking robot. They're made for between, on practice, 10 to 15 years of lifespan. If you remanufacture them, you get an additional 8 to 10 years. That makes sense, the same amount of materials. In circular economy, we always say recycling is the last resort. So think of it, if you recycle your phone, it's 2-3 euros material value. If you refurbish it, nowadays 600 euros. And you can help recycling, for instance, by secondary material agreements, offtake agreements, that you say for the next 3 years you will buy your nickel or cobalt that has been recovered. But we can't just recycle our way out of this. If we think about the really, really sensitive materials, think gallium, germanium, indium, those are maybe 1% or less in our telephones. And if we recycle them, we tend to dilute them in the copper. So they're lost forever. So if we want to recycle those things and we want to close the loop, then we had to set up sorting, recycling, metallurgy, chemistry, and make precursors again, for instance, for our semiconductors. This is the topic that we're dealing with in a European project. The E3 project is called Closer, closing the loop in Europe for 4 critical raw materials. And then you touch upon end-of-waste criteria if you need 4 lands, digital product passports again. So quite sensitive, quite complex. How can we stimulate this in Europe? Procurement. It creates a pull factor in the market, and public procurement is 15% of GDP. So they're definitely, in the Netherlands alone, is 85 billion euros. So if you use that, then let's say it can stimulate the market. Now, if I zoom out, Europe cannot recycle its way out of it. It's much more a full value chain approach, design, service models, repair, remanufacturing, and recycling. I think Europe's legislation is anticipating. We have this, let's say, vision where we want to be in 2050. We have the Critical Raw Materials Act, we have the CHIPS Act, we have ESPR, the right to repair, producer responsibility, circular procurement. I think the future is circular, and that counts for Europe, everybody in Europe, but everybody wants to trade with Europe. So also for Japan, the European regulations will influence. What I admire about Japan is, let's say, their sense of perfection. So they're probably the best engineers in the world, but you have to combine it also with a system approach. And I think that's where we can find each other.
Very good. And you represent a network, and this particularly this procurement you're talking about, how you can create that demand in the market or in the societal economies. So how do you work now in Europe with creating a scalable demand reduction of the critical raw materials and collaboration?
In general, if everybody does his own thing, you don't get critical mass. So you have to go beyond an individual approach and use more collaborative approach. So clusters and procurement coalitions that can definitely help. If I start with hubs, it can be regional, it can be sector-based, industry-based. They are orchestrators. So typically, they aggregate expertise in pilots. So and that leads to industrial symbiosis, for instance. Think like harbor areas, Port of Rotterdam, Port of Groningen. They map offer and demand. They make an inventory of flows, qualities, quantities, demand and time, and that creates a new dynamics. Waste for one is resource for another. And that can lead to shared infrastructure. Groningen has plug-and-play networks that go beyond just CO2 or steam. So we have at least 8, let's say, networks, underground infrastructure, which are plug-and-play. They also map the pilots. So think of manufacturing pilots, component harvesting, secondary material flows. But if you go this way, let's say when you work on pilots, you soon see that everybody has the same kind of challenges. So standards, certification, regulatory things, and that's another thing where clusters and hubs can make a difference. Let's say, they can be one voice to the national or European regulator. And this reduces fragmentation, and you can make, let's say, create standards, and then you create scale. Procurement coalitions, you have large buyers coalition, can be cities, utilities, cooperatives, OEM alliances. You can create a predictable amount of demand in the market. Forward purchase agreements, so you have the automotive industry who says to Umicore in Belgium, we will take for the next year your cobalt and a nickel for a certain price arrangement. That helps. Circular procurement criteria and tenders. that helps also to create a market. You know what the demand is, what you need. So you, again, you set the standards. And that can lead to more standardized digital product passports. Yeah, keep it here. You're right. You can pull demand. I think this is what Europe can do for critical raw materials. Industry alone cannot do it. Germany alone cannot do it. France alone cannot do it. But if you, as Europe, you would say we need indium phosphate or we need gallium, that's probably, let's say, already more interesting. And in general, I think by committing long-term to secondary sources, coalitions can provide price stability, what industry needs. So, let me a long answer, but hubs are very important to create scale and set the standard. And by procuring together, you can create mass. So on one side, you look on the front side of the market, and the other side, you look at, let's say, the back side of the market, and then you link the two.
Very good. A very good answer as well. And you also refer to the regulatory context of the market. So in that aspect, Agatha, since you also have kind of a double role, you represent youth and activism, but you also have engagement with EU policy. From the European perspective and your perspective, concrete policies and business models that kind of are put into effect now. What is the most efficient or most oriented to get CRM reduction, demand reduction from your side? How do you see that from your perspective?
So I think something that we have to realize that's extremely important is that the most circular and cleanest raw material is the one that we don't actually extract. And we can have all the conversations that we want about all kinds of different mechanisms and policies, and I'll go into that in a moment, but this is really the key. So our fastest lever isn't all kinds of different efficiency tweaks that we can think of, but it's actually looking at how to reduce absolute demand. And when you think about it, you know, fewer products that we need means fewer raw materials that we're mining in the first place, right? So I think otherwise what we have to realize is that a lot of those efficiency gains actually risk being swallowed in a way, but by the rebound effects. So we end up in the situation where we actually end up even shifting some of the demand from one critical material to another. So that's really the key. And I think if we only focus on securing supply and we risk repeating exactly the same story that we had in the same mistakes with the fossil fuel discussion, which is, you know, we end up with overdependence, with externalized costs, with very fragile geopolitical situation. So I think demand reduction can really strengthen Europe's resilience. It can really also reduce a lot of pressure on the communities, particularly those communities in the global south that are most affected. So I think step number one really is reducing demand overall, setting binding material footprint targets. You know, in the EU, we have the overarching climate targets, and there has been such a transformational process for them to have an impact on the industry, on businesses, on organizations, on legislators. It has been a massive decarbonization discussion that I think is extremely planted into all kinds of conversations that we have in the environmental space. But why don't we have an equivalent of a scale for circular economy? Why don't we have overarching targets for materials and for reducing the materials? I think that's a very important question that I've been asking for a long time, that I wish we had a more serious conversation about, because no matter what little tweaks and little efficiency solutions we might have, the overall picture is that we do need to reduce our resource consumption. And I think, you know, we can also talk here about durability and lifetime extension. I think, you know, I don't know about fastest. I think we would need very, you know, detailed modeling for that and a lot of data. But I think there's something to be said about durability and lifetime extension as probably some of the most effective as the second step, whilst ensuring that we do actually have an overarching objective to reduce resource consumption. So, you know, we can look here at let's say doubling the lifespan of EV batteries or electronics, and that could really directly reduce the need for a new lithium or cobalt or any other rare earths. So this is really a conversation that needs to be had, where it's about combining some of the most ambitious policies and ensuring that we don't just talk about circular economy as, and this is very common, and I think this was mentioned also a few times today and in previous sessions, but there is still an dominant conversation around circular economy being about recycling. And I see this particularly in the industry, particularly in some of the biggest businesses, where a lot of the conversations are about how proud we are because we recycle XYZ%, or we've made this much progress in the last year, 2 or 3 years. But there isn't a conversation about what we actually need circular economy to be and what circular economy actually is, which is that it goes a lot more beyond recycling. So I think focusing on understanding the role that materials play, not just in the context of our industry, but also in the context of the communities that are affected, in the context of the larger geopolitical conversation, and also in the way that, you mentioned Europe, but I think this is really a justice issue in the way that Europe is affecting a lot of the global south communities is an extremely important one. So I would really, really emphasize this, and I think it's extremely important that we do have this point being brought up in a conversation like this one, alongside any other topics that we might have. But this is really, really important, and this is something where I think there has been such a dominant push against what is, in the end, the most effective measure we can have.
Very good. And circling back to Japan, from Europe to Japan, via the global south, of course, following the global value chains and material flow and supply chains. You talk about longevity, durability, and that's qualities. And moving from quantity-oriented value creation to quality-oriented value creation, and decoupling natural resource materials from economic value is one of the goals, to manage to get that demand, in addition to decrease consume in itself. So there's many aspects to this, of course, but the point is we need to take down our resource takeout, and we need to do it together, both from Europe to Japan to the world. Very short on the last 5 minutes before our first hour is over, and we will change to the next commenting panel. How do you perceive this in Panasonic, being a Japanese global brand, for the future?
Thank you. Yes, just as Mr. Frick said and Ms. Agatha said, not having to consume material at all is the best, indeed. So, for example, what we're trying to do is more of a subscription-based model. So instead of a classical linear, produce materials, consume materials, produce and sell to consumers, but try the subscription-based model. So in this, the consumers can lease the appliances and use it for several years, and once a new model comes out, they can upgrade it. And for the used appliances, we collect back and we take it to factories, we clean it, replace parts if necessary, and we really resupply to the market. So this is actually quite good because we don't necessarily consume the new materials. Yeah. And then but then there's actually a couple of challenges. For example, for the consumer side, that they need to change their mindsets and behaviors. Because for the appliances, because it is so deeply connected to our everyday life, some consumers may feel uneasy about using appliances that someone else has used. Like using the washing machine, using refrigerator that someone else has used, in the past. Even though we clean it, we refurbish it, it's all good. But then, we have to go through that psychological barrier of the consumer in order to accelerate the new the model. Yeah. So, and when it comes to disposing as well, do you actually dispose materials properly and everything? So, so we have to change in order to change it into not only circular, but circular also appliance as well. Yeah, so have to go through not only industry, but from the consumer side as well.
Very good. Consumer behavior must also be educated into this, and you need to change the whole culture for sustainability. Toyota, last words, Takahiro-san, with aspects of quality and collaboration. And in Toyota's procurement, are you collaborating now with Panasonic or other businesses on procurement of critical materials, or how do you see this going forth for Toyota, such a big and important industrial global player.
Okay, maybe quick.
Very quick.
Yeah, quick. Yes, just one thing I can say. So Toyota cannot proceed this activity alone. No, we cannot. We need to collaborate with supplier and Panasonic as well. We need to collaborate. So but sometimes we can easily say just order to the supplier. We would like to avoid this situation. We need to talk and discuss and find a solution together. This, I think, is the best way for the circular economy. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panel. Big applause. And then we need to change out the chairs. And back to you, Catherine, and Nina, and Kilian, and also Yumiko, you need to invite to the stage for the further discussion before the closing note with Potechnik. So please.
Nina, we will be inspired by what we heard now and bring together a panel. And I want to invite Yumiko Noda. Frek, can you please? And we wish you very best luck in your next panel, Frek. I know you're busy, so it's so long. See you later. Yes. Thank you, Takahiro. Thank you as well. Very well. And Kilian Lowen, I invite you back to the here, and also Nina Aagard. Ja, jeg skal det. First of all, we have been having introductions with Nina and Kilian, but I really want to say hello to you, Yumiko Noda. Yes? You are representing the Japanese business organization. You have quite, I would say, crossover experience. So when we look into the lens of critical raw materials and circular economy from your side, I'm really thrilled to listen. How do you see this, and what did you listen now?
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. As you mentioned, I have several hats. The first hat is working for Veolia Japan. I'm leading Veolia Japan as a whole, so I'm basically a recycler in the circular economy front. The second, I'm a vice chair of Keidanren, which is a Japanese industry association, which has 1,500 big Japanese corporations like Toyota, Panasonic, and so forth. And there I lead the circular economy initiative over the last 5 years in transforming the Japanese industry from a linear-based business model into more circular economy. So that's the second one. The third hat is the advisory board member for the government, METI, Ministry of Trade, International Trade and Industry, which is the ministry who's pushing the circular economy policy in Japan. So I've been working for the METI to really come up with all the initiatives and policies on the circular economy. So from that perspective, maybe I'd like to comment quickly on the critical raw materials importance. I think the EU and Japan are facing very similar challenges. Japan is heavily, excessively dependent on China, obviously, on the critical raw materials. And the economic security situation is really worsening. We are surrounded by China, Russia, North Korea. Geopolitical situation is quite serious for us. And Japan obviously has a target of achieving net zero by 2050 in order to transition from the into green economy. We need critical raw materials for the EV batteries, for the renewable energy, for the solar panels or wind powers. So we say that in order to become more green, we need to rely on China, become more red. That's what we say in Japan. So it's a really inconvenient truth. So we try to be more, greener, but we have to depend on China. That's why circular economy is quite important from the policy perspective and also industry perspective. That's why I've been very passionate about promoting circular economy. It's not easy for the industry to move from the conventional business model into circular. It's not easy because they want to sell more and more and more the new products. They don't want to incur any additional cost for using the recycled materials at all. So 5 years ago, it was very difficult for moving the industry into more circular business. But I think after Russia, Ukraine, or China, US, tensions become more severe. I think the industry started to realize that the circular economy is a way forward to decouple from all the risks. So I'm very happy. The government is now putting forward the platform, a collaborative platform. I think in the earlier session, everybody talked about working together, collaborative, ecosystem, and so forth. And METI created last year the circular partners, which is industry, government, and academia. Platform to foster circular economy together. And as of today, more than, in fact, the correct number is 755 organizations are member of this platform. 650 industries, companies, private sector companies, 30 municipalities, and 75, something like that, research institutions, universities. So it is a collaborative effort to achieve circular economies by creating the very detailed vision, a milestone to have a data network, a collaborative network for database, like I think mentioned by the digital passport or material passport, like that. And the third is to create a model case for collaborative circular economy businesses. I'm leading one of the working group for that. So I think it's very good. We are really starting the collaborative efforts to become more independent for the critical raw materials, especially for the EV batteries is very important for the Japanese industries. Solar panel recycling is very important. In Japan, we started the feed-in tariff system in 2012. So I think within 20 years, 30 years after that, we have to recycle the solar panels. So the METI, the government, is now starting to support the recycling of the solar panels. We have been heavily reliant on China for the solar panel, so we have to create our own, the system to really, circulate the solar panel critical raw material. The solar panel includes lots of rare metals, very important rare metals. So we need to be more autonomous for that. So I think a couple of initiatives are moving ahead over the last 2 or 3 years in Japan.
It's quite impressive to listen the systemic approach where that is happening. Representing now so many, more than 1,000 members in your organization, your federation of industry companies. What is the most significant? Is it the industry or is it the policy which is driving this from the Japanese side now?
It's a very good question. I think unlike EU, the Japanese government doesn't impose very strict requirements or demands. I think I always admire EU Commission, which has a very determined, policy and force the industries to, reach certain targets of using recycled material and so forth. But in Japan, the government is reluctant put a very stringent target for the industries. That's why METI created this platform so that industry themselves can put the target, which is reasonably ambitious, but reasonably achievable. So it's going to be a collaborative effort, both bottom up and I would say also from the policy side, working together to really come up with the target as a whole. I think Toyota, Iwaya-san was mentioning that Toyota is leading the way. I think Toyota is taking initiative to really, organize all the industries to become more circular, which is good. Panasonic is also one of the leading companies in Japan to really come up with more circular business model to lead the way. So I think Japan is a bit unique. It's more collaborative effort, more bottom-up approach. Although METI is really pushing, indirectly to, create the platform, provided the legislative framework to really support the recycling and the circular initiative.
We hear this amazing effort to reduce the dependency on critical raw materials in Japan. When you listen this out, Nina Aagard, how do you see the Nordic region, which is also gathering resources and aiming pretty ambitious for being the most integrated and sustainable region in the world by 2030? So these ambitions are well aligned with the European policies. How do you see the roadmap ahead when you listen to European and Japanese industries and policymakers?
Well, I think, first of all, I love your enthusiasm. And then, secondly, I kind of also know the same. The feeling is the same, that there is a challenges. About being ambitious, I think that we need to be that. I mean, it might be that we don't reach the goals, but at least we try, and we try harder because we have ambitious goals. At the Nordics at the moment, and now what we are doing, if I've been very concrete in the collaboration and the governments, what we are working on, alongside with the circularity, we have new challenges that we need to address. And instead of seeing these new challenges as something obstacles, they are like possibilities to implementing the circularity. And now I'm referring to preparedness that we need to address in other ways than we have had to do before. And this means that we need to have a focus on the very basic supply chain. And when we talk about, and I think someone mentioned the supply chains and security, supply security. And for us, it's also opportunity to think about the consuming in a new ways, and in that sense, use the challenge of being forced to think about the preparedness, but in other ways than before, also being a huge business opportunity for companies and a kind of thinking efficiency in a smart way for these times that is now. Creating a new situations all the time. So now we have to think about food and water and electricity in a ways, and of course the critical raw materials and minerals in a totally different ways than just a couple of years ago. So kind of interlinking all the challenges together and seeing the solutions in those interlinks and the kind of the gaps we can fill together. That's what we are now working in a very concrete and creating projects for the circularity in a very multiple perspectives. And I think that's kind of wonderful thing that we can do that together with our EU colleagues and everyone else. Yeah.
It was quite interesting to listen to the cases before, because it's not only about policy or engineering, it's also about the perception and the human factor, and also how we heard from Toyota, how we feel about this. Even if there are so many parts in the car, it's very human related as well. How do you see the narratives and campaign mechanics can encourage industry towards the lifespan of products and services? So what kind of narrative are we approaching? Is it a push or is it a pull, or what can be compelling suggestions to do this transition?
I mean, yeah, I was thinking about the word narratives, because I think that there is actually only one narrative it's a necessity, and we need to do this. There is no kind of alternatives anymore. So I think that's the narrative, that now it's the time to act. There is no excuses anymore.
We heard also from your side, Yumiko, how you actually address the geopolitical situation. It also always feels very vulnerable to talk about it, because what used to emerge as maybe a circular economy as a movement for nature, climate, environment, also new businesses we heard, now really taps into maybe a new era where we see the availability and dependency on raw materials is also harshening, and it's moving to another kind of the industrial and debates. How do you approach this from your side, being so dependent on not your own raw materials, but still on imports?
I think it is quite an important point, as Nina mentioned. We are not really focusing on, not just thinking of raw material like metals, but rather nature is very important. A nexus among water, nature, food, and critical raw materials is very important. We don't really, think about water, how much water is needed, for extracting and so forth. So I think we need to have a more integrated view on all the issues. And I think using the bio, sources is very important. Japan, we don't have any, we have very little resources like, fossil fuels or critical raw materials, but we do have lots of natures. We have, forests. We are covered by the forest by almost 80%, similar to the Nordic region. So how we can utilize all the bio materials to really create a more autonomous economy and society. I think we are trying to learn from the, in fact, Nordic regions. The Canada is planning to send a delegation to Finland earlier next year to really, understand the circular and the bioeconomy initiative. I think you might understand that you are more advanced in the Nordic region, how to utilize the natural resources on top of all the critical raw material. So I think it's a very important issue, but I think Japanese companies are yet in that stage. We just started the circular economy, but the combining bioeconomy and circular economy is the next, I think, step that we need to really seriously think.
It's very inspiring listening to you. Since the very beginning of entering the era of circular economy, Japan has in so many ways showed how local societies, communities and cities also have shown practical examples of fantastic recycling and using the human and community systems. We will, this will be some kind of walkover for you very soon. Killian, I just want to listen out because you used to be vice mayor of Yokohama. How do you see the role of not only industries but collaborating with the communities and people embracing this?
Right. So I was a vice mayor in Yokohama City, which is the second largest city in Japan with a 3.7 million population. It's a huge city. It's very difficult. We have, a huge volume of waste. And we are trying to reduce. We had a very ambitious target to reduce the waste volume by 30%. It's a very ambitious target, but we work with the community, citizens, especially the school kids, to really, let them understand why the recycling or reducing the waste is important for the planet. So it took 7 years to really achieve our target. So we achieved a 37% reduction of the waste. And we are demanding the citizens to segregate the waste into 15 different kinds, which is very cumbersome. Of course, you're 51.5. So if you have an umbrella, you have to break umbrella into metal parts, wood parts, and plastic parts. Otherwise, the collection people from the city will not collect. They put it there. And after 5 or 6 years, we started to impose certain penalties for the citizens which don't properly segregate the waste. But we are very patient to really work with the communities, really teach them the reason for the sorting initiative. So I think in the end it worked, and the people, citizens, become more accustomed to segregate the waste, and they buy less because they know that they have to Salt. So I think we were able to change a little bit of the consumers' behavior, attitude for the consumption by asking them to salt. But that is one part. Of course, the industry has to change, in my view, because citizens cannot segregate everything, because the goods are made with very strong, attached. It's impossible. So the design is the most important. After experiencing this recycling initiative, working with the consumers, citizens, what we found is that industry has to change the design so that people can dismantle. So product design is very important. That was missing in Japan. We are very much focused on the recycling.
Can I ask a question?
Come on, jump in. Yes, of course.
I'm curious to know, because earlier you were describing how your consortium, it is in Japan, it's very industry-led, very business-led, the drive and the change, which there's a lot of in Europe as well. It's not just top-down regulation. But then that example you give is the city forcing the citizens to behave in a certain way with strict rules, and it seems to have worked really well. So I have two quick questions, if I can. One is, has this now been replicated in other cities across Japan? And secondly, do you think it's something, is there a lesson in it in terms of strong legislation, properly directed, can drive behavior change? And will we see more of that maybe for circular economy?
Yes, and Yokohama City was quite early, kind of bird, early, in terms of setting up the goal of reducing the waste. That was 2011. So it was a very long time ago. And other cities are trying to, become similar, and they also mandated the citizens to segregate. One of the small cities in the western part of Japan, they have a 45 different sorting system. I don't know, it's too much for the citizens. But they achieved 81% of recycling rates because of that very stringent requirement. It doesn't work in Europe. I was speaking with various people in Europe that never is possible. Japanese people are very diligent, and they are very, I think, obey the requirement by the citizens. So I think regulation plays a very important role. I think to your question, but also the more voluntary type work, industry side is necessary. That's what's happening in Japan. But in the end, I'm of a view that the government has to impose certain regulation. Otherwise, some industry like Toyota or Panasonic can go, faster. But other smaller companies cannot really afford to embrace more circular, business. So I think unless we impose, reasonable kind of legislation requirement, then the whole industry may not move forward. So I'm more aligned with a bit of legislative direction.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that in the Nordics we have a lot of focus on regulations and guidelines, and I think that's the way to go, because then it's also awareness of how the future will look like if we don't do anything, but also like the future business opportunities and helping the companies keep in competitive edge when they do more than they are needed, and the regulations are drivers for push them even further.
We heard Yumiko really highlight the importance of design, not only on the recycling, so in the beginning of life, not in the end of life. How do you look at the Nordic industry's ability to transition when we know that traditional mining is 13% of the Nordic GDP? And how do you see the entry point for this region, listening to the advice of Yumiko, where we can start designing for circular economy?
So for sure we need to go and look at the the mining industry and focus on the kind of the second loop and not the virgin materials anymore. So we need to change our thinking and the total system that we have, even more than we have done now. I think that having this kind of understanding, and you mentioned the community thinking and thinking across and taking people in, inviting the industry and then the communities and then the research at the same table. This is what we do all the time. So I think this is the way, and we can see that we can change kind of the thinking around and understanding that, okay, we can still have our industries and we are absolutely going to need the critical raw materials even more than before, but the way to get them and how to recycle in the closed loops especially. So this is the way to do it, and that we focus on recycling, we focus on the circular principles, and then we take the different parts of the community around the table, because I think I get to mention also the human costs of the industry. So for us, it's very important that when we talk about the transition, that it is also just a democratic transition, and that everyone is heard. So even though it's the long way and it's a hard way, this is the only way. So for us.
I have a friend who says he's been working with politics for many years, and he says, when he was convinced about the circular economy, he said, actually, circular economy can solve almost 80% of all the societal challenges we're dealing with. So it's quite triggering to listen to you. I want to quote Aagard. She was really calling for resource democracy. So we're actually changing some of the terms, how we talk about the materials and also the belonging to materials. So this is also why you have been advocacy for youth engagement within your European Commission work, but also in Ireland we see that how we define circular economy has quite a social, not quite a social touch, but it's very integrated with social, keeping humans in resource in the loop, not only materials. Can you please elaborate a little bit how you see this, Killian?
Yeah, well, it's really inspiring hearing this morning's discussion, first of all, that change is possible and it can come from all different directions. There's different motivations. We had a conversation on the walk over here. Does it matter the motivation? Whether if a company thinks, well, it's going to be more profitable if I move to a circular model, because I don't think it's always an expense, particularly if you combine it with the regulation being very clear. This is a message of this is the direction we're going in, and now if you align your business model to this, you're guaranteed to be more competitive and more profitable, and therefore it's not, the risk is reduced of taking these chances. But if that's if that's an executive's motivation for moving to a circular model, does that matter? I mean, my motivation, I got involved with circularity from a climate and biodiversity side of things, going, this is a better way to manage our resources so that we have less of an impact. And at the moment, and I'm always changing my mind on things, at the moment I think it doesn't matter what the motivation is, that there's benefits, the benefits for this are economic, they're environmental, and there's societal benefits as well. And we certainly haven't leaned into them enough with our story about circular economy. Certainly within the EU, it's been very technical, it's been very business focused, and that's okay. That's where we needed the change to start happening. But I think the next chapter of the story has to bring in that social element. I know tomorrow we have a session also talking about bioeconomy and the bioeconomy conversation, which is part of the circular economy, is and you talk about exploiting the tree resource, forestry resource that you have. At least within the EU, there's more of a focus on the social element for bioeconomy, so maybe that will bring it into the conversation. But I think, I'm triggered this morning to extend the conversation beyond already what we've heard, and I'm thinking, we do need to completely rethink about extraction, about Agatha has been quoted a lot from her intervention this morning, but on who owns this, the ownership of the goods, the raw materials that are exploited. And we've seen that our existing model is whoever has the financial capital to invest and go and extract those raw materials takes all of the ownership of them and takes all the profitability out of them. Okay, there's processing involved afterwards. But rethinking that relationship is a revolutionary way to look at how we structure things. And I think also our relationship with nature as a result. A few years ago, I was working on a charter for fundamental rights of nature, which wasn't going to change the world as such, because we have enough legislation and rules that are not being implemented that probably could deserve a focus for stronger implementation. But I think having a Charter of Fundamental Rights of Nature is very interesting in changing the story and the mindset. And we heard on the previous panel that some of this work is about changing how you think about things. And I think thinking about nature as having rights is a very interesting way of shifting our mindset towards exploitation of raw materials and extraction from nature as well. And the other final point to make, because I'm sure I've been talking too long, is about profitability. And so all of the executives and companies that we've heard from who are doing great work and are forerunners, their goal is still to increase profitability every year. And maybe there's another conversation to be had there. What is enough? What is enough profitability? If you have a successful business that can make a certain level of profit every year so that the company is secure and safe and they're providing reliable employment and good salaries for everybody, somewhere we don't have a cap on that. We don't ever say, well, maybe this is enough. Maybe this is far enough for us to go, so that we're not chasing that increased profitability all the time. And I think we can learn from Japan in that, by the way, as a final positive point, where the average CEO wages in terms of a multiple of the average worker is about 12 times the average worker, whereas in the US, of course, it's over 250. In lots of EU countries, it's 140, 150 times. So there's lessons to be learned there as well about how we structure our business models and how we cap that profitability.
Sorry. No problem. Wonderful. This has been a fantastic half an hour. And you will be able to wrap it up before we go into the next session with guests online and comments. But just some final words, Catherine, before we do the transition.
I think all these key words were spot on when we go to our last session, going to wrap up with Janis Potočnik, the co-chair of International Resource Panel. But my final question actually for you Mikko, is a little bit personal, because I read an article about you, how from your company, where you say you have been quite daring. You have been the first penguin in many senses, both in finance, in policy, and also now paving a way for circular economy in one of the largest industry federations. How do you, as like first penguin, when you jump into, how do you see the flock coming in, or how do you see the circular economy as a prosperous opportunity, not a risk mitigating, but actually
this is irrelevant.
So
I'm conscious of the time.
I really want to listen to you on this one.
It is very relevant. Please answer.
Patient. The patience matters most. I think initially nobody listened to me. Nobody thinks everybody thinks I'm crazy, and I'm always coming from another planet. So alien. I'm always alien. But after patience, maybe 1 out of 100 people will agree. They share the same vision. As we discussed, for the future, societal, needs, environmental. So someone appears, and then, that's a great idea, so let's work together. And then gradually, the number of the people who are willing to collaborate, increases. So K-Online is a big, organization. It was very hard to really move, but some people start to realize, it's important to move on circularity. So I would say patience is important.
Truly inspiring. Listening to Japan, Ireland, Europe, Nordic, and now wrapping up, keeping these words at mind. I think when we start talking about nature rights, material economics, this and how we actually need to rethink economics and material productivity, this really needs quite lots of knowledge sharing. This cannot only be policies. This has to become innovation and collaboration. So, you've been listening to these inspiring voices. What's your key
Absolutely.
takeaway?
On the transition to next phase, I would really also like to emphasize the depth of your conversation was fantastic. And I really bring with me what we can learn from Japan in not only designing for circularity, but also educating for circularity, taking it in the early stages. And the longevity and the long-term perspective that you bring in when you start in children's school already and getting this into a culture aspect. And I will reveal a small secret. I've been working in Japan since 2011, and I have 10 companies here. And one of the really, truly lessons to learn is patience and the longevity and understanding of the natural connectivity that is profound in the market culture of Japan, which we can really bring with us to both the Nordics and to Europe and the rest of the world. So there is some really deep wisdom in how you manage your natural resources in many aspects, and also how you form your society with the educational model that you have. So it's fascinating, and it's really touching to hear you talk about this, and also your reflections and perspectives, Gillian, and also how we bring it with us home, Nina, to the Nordics, through Nordic Circle Hotspot and Nordic Council of Ministers. So this is truly what we wanted to create, a arena for conversation, and I think you really had a good conversation today. It was a joy listening to this. Thank you, and applause. So on behalf of the Nordic Circular Hotspot and Natural State and Nordic Council of Ministers, we are very happy to have these conversations. This is a global event. It's a global arena. The World Expo in Osaka is really where this conversations is to be held. And to emphasize the connectivity, we have broadcasted this event to the world through several arenas. And we also have invited in guests that is in, I guess he's in Europe now, Janis Potočnik. And if he's ready online, give me the thumbs up. Very good. There he is. Then Catherine, hello and welcome. So then you please.
Thank you.
Good morning, Janis. How is? It's really lovely to have you part of this WISE panel session today about materials. What are your key takeaways? Did you listen to our panel now? What do you see? How do you see what we've been talking about?
Good morning, Catherine, and thank you for the invitation. Indeed, a very good debate. Let me try to explain the currently prevailing approach and challenges linked to critical raw materials. And for the beginning, listening to the debate, I would start with two clarifications. Materials are, according to IRP definition, everything we extract from the earth. Biomass, metals, non-metallic minerals, and fossil fuels. In CRM case, we mainly talk about metals and minerals part. But the challenge we see in IRP is managing all the above mentioned, plus water and land, in a more sustainable way. So decoupling of well-being and economic growth from resource use and environmental impacts. Circular economy is an instrument helping us to deliver that decoupling in practice, as well as part of a bigger picture of economic, societal, if you want, cultural transformation needed to deliver SDGs and other international commitments. It is the oldest concept on the planet Earth. All nature is based on principles of circularity. Nothing is lost. Everything has its purpose. And we humans, as part of nature, should abide by the same principles inspired by nature, and unfortunately what seems logical in theory isn't so clear in practice. Now to energy transition. There we are moving from a fossil-based economy to metals and mineral-based economy. While this is, of course, limiting overall mining needs due to broadly, in a perspective, giving up fossil fuel mining, which is welcomed, it is opening new challenges related to increased metals and minerals needs. We should avoid that this would lead to new challenging economic, environmental, social problems. UN Secretary has established, as you know, a critical energy transition minerals panel, and it's important to remember that that panel was set based on environmental concerns to enable energy transition needed to help tackle environmental, in particular climate challenge related. Current critical raw material policies are more economically driven. You have talked a lot about them today. And all of those are, by the way, important. But among the resource-related measures which would limit future critical raw material needs, main attention still goes to recycling. Recycling could be, of course, an important part of the solution, but only in the case when demand is stable. In the case of critical raw materials, which gained attention exactly because of increasing needs, recycling could hardly be the answer. So if we would, for example, recycle all the batteries in use of today, but we would need 10 times more of them in a decade or so, with recycling, we could not seriously contribute to the future needs. Saying that, we should not lower attention linked to the importance of recycling, but rather search for other, more currently appropriate solutions. So, like many of your colleagues mentioned today, we should focus on all circularity options. But in the first place, optimizing delivery of human needs in energy and material-intensive systems, like mobility through reduced need for travel by working from home, balanced urban design, communal and active transport or housing, through better utilization of buildings, space-efficient, balanced neighborhoods, and so on. In short, using all available circularity options. How would that help? It would address one of the core problems of the current approach, which is exploring the future energy and critical raw material needs without seriously questioning the baseline of the current use of materials and energy. And currently, we overuse them, use them in a wasteful, unjust, and unsustainable way. Extrapolating this system in the future will neither solve sustainability-related problems nor provide an easy solution for energy transition. So lowering the baseline through all available circularity options, decoupling, would limit future needs, make transition to renewable energy easier, and also create a space for countries not yet meeting their essential human needs to expand the use of energy and materials while respecting sustainability requirements and planetary boundaries. To conclude, IRP has already provided several important contributions to that end, from mineral resource governance in the 21st century, where we are proposing sustainable development license to operate, to enabling energy transition, the co-chairs think piece suggesting 3 solution pillars for effective transition of material management, and recent financing for responsible supply of energy transition minerals for sustainable development, and tackling governance and financing for sustainability questions. Please take them in your hands and read them, because they could help.
Thank you very much, Janus Potočnik. It is always, you put elements together at place, and we tap into quite structural pain points where we need to understand how we return to the oldest concept of Earth, which is, as you're quoting you, as is the circular economy. So we are starting to wrap up this day now. It has been inspiring to just listen how it works in industries and among engaged movers and shakers, both in Europe and both in Japan. We know that we need to collaborate along on the markets in the value chains. And this is the second day of World Expo in Osaka. quite huge delegations being here with a very compact program where we tap into a variety of topics on circular economy. And this session on critical raw materials is maybe one of the core that we need to deal with both in markets and policy-wise and in market standards to be able to perform the rapid transition. So we will be continuing these dialogues also with you, Janusz, in the near future. And for us, being representing the Nordic Circular Hotspot, we don't need to close. Jan can come with one more reflection on what you heard today, and also what is the most important bridging points between Asia and Europe, understanding of value and value chains and perspectives and possibilities of collaboration as you see the conversations today.
Yeah, thanks. Indeed, I would like to say some more things which are connected to that. I think that following the circular economy hierarchy would probably be a good lead. Yeah. Integrating better also the missing system design based on the refuse and rethink strategies. But what could certainly help would be setting material-related targets based on material footprint, taking into account all materials linked to consumption. So what this would do, it would give materials management proper recognition, attention in policy space, provide a clear signal to all governmental services to go in that direction, as well as, of course, also to the private sector where innovation matters. It would complement efficiency with sufficiency, decarbonization with dematerialization policies, and provide a missing attention to demand-side solutions. It would contribute to strategic autonomy and competitiveness. It would introduce in policy debates essential question, who is crossing planetary boundaries through excessive resource use? And it would help closing the gap among global north and global south, putting equity questions in the center of the debate. Transition to minerals-based economy will have important geostrategical consequences, and Agatha was touching them. In total, there will be fewer mining needs due to energy transition leading to less fossil fuel mining, but there will be additional increased needs for mineral-related mining. So in different geographical locations, potentially also environmentally challenging with different economic and social impacts, it will lead to an important redistribution of power and impacts, which calls for a carefully managed and well-balanced process and governance. The events in the last few months have made it abundantly clear that the battle over natural resource use is and will increasingly become a key driver for well-being, but also for security threats and geopolitical tensions of the world. Transition should be just, equitable, and providing energy needs for all. So without careful management, the extraction of these materials can perpetuate environmental degradation, social inequalities, and economic volatility in producer countries. So sustainable mining practices, fair market structures, responsible consumption in high demand countries are essential to ensure that energy transition does not come at the expense of those who provide its fundamental resources for benefiting them. To conclude, science is telling us that we are already bridging 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries, and our policy attention mainly goes to energy transition. Energy is essential ingredient of life as well as of our economic activity, but only 1 out of 6 planetary boundaries is linked to energy transition and climate change. What about the rest? Energy transition is very important, but it's essential to make all economic system less wasteful and more just. This will not only lead to more sustainable future, more sustainable economy, but also make energy transition easier. Thus, debate linked to CRMS is important and necessary, but all of the above must respect and be integrated into solutions of the broader resource management debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have one last question for you, because you were also part of an initiative that was launched this year. When we tap into the conflicting interests and battle of natural resources and materials, it was also IRP was supporting an initiative of International Material Agency. How do you see this is really tapping into what we're talking about now, and what is this agenda ahead on IMA?
Indeed, Catherine, you're right. All that and more, it's which I was mentioning before. In the first place, it would be relevant to provide trustable material flows, impact data, analysis related to them, and that could all be potential functions of something which we, working-wise, call International Materials or Minerals Agency, to ensure that such international resource governance operates in ecologically just manner. One of IRP panel members actually proposed a global mineral trust to prevent inefficient and inequitable protectionist policies. So we are working with few of the partners what could be the best way ahead, but I have to be clear, this requirement is coming in particularly from the business sector, because they want some clarity in the complex supply chains nowadays. And I think it would be important to listen.
Wow, yeah, this is very interesting work that is going on. And you emphasize a very important point. So, but thank you so much for your contribution. And I look forward to the continued conversation also about this point, especially the fact that the business communities are now seeking clarity in the global supply chains, global value systems with different initiatives, because unfortunately we don't have any global order. There is no global regulatory mechanism that exists. We need to relate on the regional interaction and collaboration, anything from Asian to European to EU to Japan to the Nordic countries in the Nordic Council of Ministers. It is all by voluntary work. And these initiatives and these conversations, and also again back to where we are today in the World Expo in Osaka, it really shows the engagement in creating a unified, just global understanding of our natural resources at large, and how we need to maintain and manage them for our future. But in the end, since there is no world order, we need to do it voluntarily and by us people talking together and businesses collaborating. So that is a fantastic perspective and work you're doing there. Thank you so much for your contribution, really showing the global perspective here in Japan from Europe where you are. We will need to go into the conclusion and the end note of the last 10 minutes. So thank you so much again, and applause for Jan Potec.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, and then we've had some wonderful conversations, I would say, today. And that was our goal, wasn't it, Catherine? With our collaborative partners and engaged speakers. It's really about talking together and setting the tone. And we want to invite you to 2 events. We want to invite you back here at the 1930 to continue the conversation here at Nordic Night in the Nordic Pavilion, because these conversations are also held outside of the stages. And then we want to invite you to our yearly summit. For 5 years, we've been hosting the Nordic Circular Summit. We've been moving it from Nordic capital to Nordic capital, Oslo, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Reykjavik, and last year in Helsinki. But just announced, this year is going to be in Nuuk, the first of the 3 autonomous regions in Greenland, where also material discussions and global geopolitics is important understandings. And not at least, the power of the periphery, how the rural, nature-rich regions needs to be included into the understanding of our dynamics. Next year we will be in Tucson, in Faroe Islands, and then at Åland, in the island in next to between Finland and Sweden. So that's our 3-year journey next time. We need to bring those parts of the world into the conversation. So join in either online or join us physically. It's a very limited space there, of course, but it is possible for physical attendance as well. there we will continue the conversation, and we're inviting you all to that. For those present here, come back here for the Nordic night. And I think I just want to really thank both Nordic Circular Hotspot at large and also Nordic Innovation for supporting us for all these years, Nordic Council of Ministers. And this was what we had to share from the stage here in Osaka. And thank you to all the audience and speakers. And let's continue the conversation.